Chapter 1 Time Travel. One early morning in August, raindrops were floating in the air, and with a slight cool breeze, the chill penetrated every corner of the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. Rows of tombstones stand here, and a kind of silence called sadness envelopes the entire sky of the cemetery. Away scooped up a bouquet of flowers in her left hand and held a black umbrella in her right hand, standing in front of her grandfather's tombstone. At her feet, there was a black wooden box. She knelt down, put down the flowers in her hands, and slowly touched the photo on the tombstone with her hand. She looked at the grandfather with a kind smile in the photo, with sadness in her eyes. Just the morning before yesterday, Grandpa was researching ingredients as usual and wanted to write a new recipe. Who would have known that at noon, my grandfather had a sudden myocardial infarction and died after resuscitation failed. A few months ago, the doctor told me that given my grandfather's current condition, he is old and suffers from severe coronary heart disease, so he should be mentally prepared for his death at any time. Although she knew that her grandfather would leave her one day, when that day actually came, she still couldn't control her sadness. Grandpa was a famous gourmet in China, and his death caused a great sensation. At yesterday's funeral, many colleagues in the food industry came to see her grandfather off. Away stood alone in the position of family members and returned gifts to the guests. She received either sympathetic or indifferent looks from people, so she could only say goodbye to her grandfather in her heart. Now she came here alone, ignoring the noise at the funeral, and just wanted to say goodbye to her grandfather. Her parents died early, and she was raised by her grandfather since she was a child. Now she has just successfully graduated from the English and American literature major and found a stable job, but her grandfather passed away. The slightly cold wind ruffled Away's hair. After standing in the cold wind for so long, she felt cold. She looked at the black wooden box at her feet and knew that it contained the recipes her grandfather had written down in recent months. Now that her grandfather was gone, Away planned to burn it in front of the grave, which was a kind of comfort. She opened the wooden box and scooped out a stack of manuscripts, but found an envelope at the bottom of the box. It reads, "A 24th birthday gift for my daughter." Away suddenly covered her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. How could she forget? Just a few days ago, her grandfather was very happy to give her an heirloom from the old Chen family as a birthday gift. Her birthday is in October, and she didn't expect her grandfather to prepare a gift so early. It's a pity. She can never see Grandpa again. She opened the envelope tremblingly and poured something out, only to hear a ding sound. Away looked through the tears in her eyes and saw a simple ring lying quietly on the stone slab. Away suddenly threw the umbrella aside, held the ring in both hands, and cried bitterly in the early morning cemetery. Grandpa is gone, never again. From now on, she will be the only one to face life. The thin strands of rain instantly enveloped Away like blue smoke. She never noticed that her tears mixed with the rain and seeped into the ring on her palm. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. I don't know how long it took, but a faint white halo rose on the surface of the ring, covering Away's entire body. Away cried bitterly in front of her grandfather's tombstone. Suddenly, her head felt very heavy. Her consciousness gradually blurred. The moment her consciousness completely disappeared, she seemed to see roses of various colors blooming around her. But there seems to be no roses in the cemetery. Away slowly opened her heavy eyelids, wanting to move, but found that her body had no strength at all. She could only stare around with a pair of eyes. She found that it was dark here, with only a few rays of light coming through the gaps. "Where is this? Why are you so bored?" She frowned, as if she had gone to the cemetery to mourn her grandfather, and then she lost consciousness while crying in front of his tombstone. By the way, she seemed to have seen many roses blooming around her. What was going on? Suddenly, the sound from outside attracted Away's attention. "Who are you? Why do you want to harm our Fong family?" Ahem. This is a man's voice. "Master, Master, how are you? Please, heroes, don't hurt us." We have money. We have money. Heroes, please scoop up the money and let our family go. This was a woman's voice. What are you doing? Robbery? Kill? Sir, she died anyway, you see. A somewhat dull voice said with a hint of hesitation. You bastard. You have to get rid of the roots. Don't let any of them go. Kill. This man's words were like the sound of a spoon scraping on a porcelain plate, with a hint of sharpness that made people feel uncomfortable. As soon as the man's voice fell, the sounds of knives striking people, the sounds of people screaming before death, and the sounds of blood spurting out could be heard everywhere. These sounds made Away's scalp numb. What are you doing? Are you filming a TV series? Who brought her to the set? By the way, didn't she faint in the cemetery? What happened next? Why does it sound so bloody? Away was anxious and tried hard to move her body, but she still couldn't. Okay, pack up and scoop out their money. Leave now. The sharp voice said the money very nonchalantly. Away feels that the goal of this group of people is not money at all. Is it just to kill people? After the sound of footsteps and the friction of rustling cloth, Away didn't hear any more sounds. It was estimated that those people should have left. She felt as if she could move a little, but now she was faced with a new problem. The air here didn't seem to be enough for her to breathe, and she was getting more and more suffocated. Away was anxious. Judging from the light coming through the gap, it was still daytime. Who was keeping her here? After Away found that she could move, she stretched out her hand to knock on the narrow wooden wall to see if anyone outside could let her out. Maybe she had adapted to the dim light here. When Away saw the hand stretched out in front of her eyes, she was so shocked that she lost 2.5 souls. These are not her hands. This is obviously the hand of a few months old baby. Oh my gosh, what's going on? Away was shocked. She just lost consciousness. How could she be like this? She can't be dead. Then she traveled through time? Away's little heart was beating fast. She reached out and touched her body all over and breathed out. Fortunately, it was a woman. No, now is not the time to think about this problem. The first priority now is to leave this strange space quickly, otherwise she is afraid that she will be suffocated to death. Away didn't care to think about what to do if she attracted bad people. The only thing she knew in her heart was that she couldn't be suffocated to death. So, she immediately waved her little hands and knocked on the wall of the box. After knocking more than 10 times, she felt pain coming from her tender, white hands. She gave up decisively and cried loudly instead. How loud can the cry of a baby these few months old be? But fortunately, the voice of this small body is quite loud. After crying for about 10 minutes, Away felt that she had no strength. She had really overestimated her small body. What to do? What to do? Are you really going to be suffocated to death? Away felt like she was out of breath. She slowly began to despair, and her crying became smaller. At this moment, Away faintly heard the voice of a child. Master, look, there are so many dead people. Wow, this kid's voice is so tender. But why didn't he seem to be afraid when there were so many dead people? Also, why is that master so calm? Isn't he afraid that children will have psychological effects after seeing dead people? No matter what, think of a way to lure them over first. So Away once again used her strength to suck the milk and cried loudly. Master, master, there are children crying. The little kid shouted again. Master heard it. Just when Away was still sighing in her heart about how beautiful this master's voice was, she suddenly felt a light. This confined space has been opened. Away was unable to open her eyes due to the light outside, so she simply closed them first. She stopped crying and took a deep breath, sighing at the beauty of being able to breathe freely. Suddenly, Away felt something poking her cheek. When she opened her eyes, she saw a 5- or 6-year-old boy poking her face with his index finger, one after another, never getting tired of it. Those big eyes were sparkling, as if they had discovered something new and interesting, and they were full of energy. Away suddenly felt that she was being teased by the little boy in front of her. She now had the advantage of age, so she simply squinted her eyes, tightened her mouth, and started to cry. The little boy seemed to be stunned for a moment, and then he realized what he was doing when he saw Wei's expression. He said in a panic, "Don't cry, don't cry." Then he retracted his hand with a guilty conscience. "What's wrong?" A voice as pleasant as the ding-dong of a clear spring sounded from above. Ah Wei heard the voice of the master and opened her eyes wide to look. She saw a man in his 30s leaning over to look at her. Although his black hair was only tied up with a scarf and his clothes looked like ordinary coarse cloth, his eyebrows, eyes, and handsome face all told Ah Wei that this man in front of her was a handsome man. Posted a new article. Away travels through time because of a family ring. What kind of adventure will this ring bring her? What kind of fate will she have in another world? And what wonderful life will she have? Everything has just begun. Chapter 2 Rescued. Away was stunned as she looked at the handsome man. The expression on her face that was inconsistent with her age made people look weird. "Master, isn't she stupid?" The little boy frowned and looked at Away with disgust. "You are stupid." Away resisted the urge to roll her eyes at him, thinking that her top priority now was to please the handsome master in front of her. She had just escaped the danger of being suffocated to death, so she didn't want to starve to death. So, her two lotus-jointed arms stretched out straight towards the handsome man, grinning as wide as possible, and showed a toothless smile towards the handsome man. Unfortunately, this body is too small, and some uncontrollable situations often occur, such as drooling. Away despised herself, grinned and drooled at the handsome man, and looked straight at the handsome man with a pair of black grape-like eyes, full of hope. But she saw the handsome man raising his eyebrows, looking at Away up and down with a thoughtful look. A chill rose from Away's back, and a thought suddenly came to her mind. Could such a handsome man be some kind of human trafficker? Thinking of this, Away's body visibly shrank, and the smile on her face gradually froze. At this moment, the handsome man suddenly stretched out his hand, passed through her creaking nest, and took her out of the box. He lifted her up with his two big hands and looked at her again. Ah Wei was so frightened by what he saw that she had no choice but to purse her lips and look like she was about to cry. Then the handsome man withdrew his gaze and looked at where Ah Wei was just now. Away followed his gaze and saw that the confined space where she was lying just now was obviously a mezzanine. She looked around again and saw that they were on a carriage. Looking at the curtains on the carriage, they were all made of gorgeous brocade. It seemed that the owner of the carriage was very rich. "Master, there is a jade pendant." The little boy stretched out his hand and scooped out a green jade pendant from the mezzanine of the carriage where Away was lying just now. He stared at the jade pendant with his big eyes, but after a while it lost its novelty and stuffed it into Away's arms. The handsome man readjusted his position in holding Away. He was not very familiar with it, but fortunately, he still held her neck in his arms. She wasn't held up for long, but Away felt that her neck could no longer support her head. Judging from her past life experience, her current body will not last more than 5 months. Exiner, let's go down. It seems that this family suffered some fatal disaster and left an orphan behind. This place is not far from the official road, and someone will come here sooner or later. It is not suitable to stay here for a long time. The handsome man thought for a moment and said. The little boy named Exa nodded seriously, answered yes, and followed the handsome man out of the carriage. As soon as Away got out of the carriage, she smelled a nauseating smell of blood. She squinted out from the handsome man's arms and saw several corpses lying on the ground. One of them was the most dazzling. A woman wearing silk satin stood in front of a man, and a long sword pierced the woman's abdomen. The man behind her was also hit by the sword. The two people's eyes were wide open, and they could not rest in peace. Away's little heart beat violently again. She naturally thought of the conversation she heard when she just woke up. This man and woman should be a couple, right? So, what does she have to do with this couple? Away had a vague idea in her mind, and there was a hint of sympathy in her eyes. Master, there is a little baby here. It was strangled to death. The little boy's voice rang again, startling Away. Hearing this, the handsome man held Away and walked to the little boy. He looked at the baby who had been dead for a long time on the ground, carefully looked at the bruises on the baby's neck, and frowned again. Away saw that the baby was also around the age of 5 months and was wearing cotton with patterns printed on it, which was obviously not as soft and shiny as what she was wearing. There was a woman lying next to the baby. Judging from her dress, she should be a wet nurse or something. There was a very thin wound on her neck, and she had been dead for a long time. But her eyes were staring straight at the baby, which made people's hearts tremble. The handsome man knelt down and stretched out his free hand to touch the woman's neck. Seeing that he pursed his lips and said nothing, Away obediently shrank into his arms, suppressing her uneasiness. After a long time, the handsome man looked at Away again, as if to her, but also as if he was murmuring to himself, "You are so lucky. Since I was stunned by Li Daitao, it was fate to meet me again. That's all, I'll take you with me." Away tilted her little head and looked at him. Seeing that his eyes were looking into the distance, she didn't dare to do anything else, so she could only shrink into his arms with the anxiety in her heart. Chapter 3: Master and Brother. Away woke up from her sleep, opened her bright black eyes, and stared at the beam in a daze. It has been 3 years since she came to this world similar to ancient China, turned into a 5-month-old baby, experienced a bloody battle, and was taken in by a beautiful man. She sighed, stretched out her little hands to pinch her fleshy little face, closed her eyes again, and thought carefully about what had happened in the past 3 years. When Master, beautiful man, took her in, he had the mentality of being obedient and not causing more trouble to others, so Away was very obedient. But children are children after all, and their bodies are very fragile. The bloody scene that day made her seriously ill, and she was in a daze for 2 months. However, every time she woke up and saw the calm eyes of the beautiful man and witnessed his superb acupuncture skills, Away gradually felt relieved. When she woke up completely, she found that they had settled in a place called Lijiakan. All people living in this small mountain village are families with the surname Li, so it is called Lijiakan. The village chief is called Li Dashan, a warm-hearted middle-aged uncle who has come to the house twice. From the conversation between the village chief and the beautiful man, Away learned that the beautiful man's original surname was Liao, and his name was Liao Qingyang. The courtyard they live in now is rented from the village chief's family. The location is a bit far from the center of the village. At the foot of a green mountain, there is a pool of clear water not far from the courtyard. The scenery is very beautiful. I heard that Li Dashan originally planned to build it and use it for retirement with his wife. The fact that Liao Qingyang and his 2 children were able to gain a foothold in a small village full of people named Li was also due to his superb medical skills. Ever since Liao Qingyang settled in Lijia village, anyone with a headache or a fever would come to ask Mr. Liao for diagnosis and treatment. The people in the village have little savings, and the fee for each consultation is only a few cents. Most of the time, they come to see the doctor with a basket of vegetables. Liao Qingyang didn't care either. With 2 little babies, life was hard, haha. The village chief was very grateful for Liao Qingyang's contribution to the whole Lijia village. He saw that the little girl brought by Mr. Liao was only a few months old and in really bad health. Mr. Liao was a man and was not very good at taking care of her, so he mobilized the women in the village to take turns taking care of the poor girl. The women had never seen a man as handsome as Mr. Liao, so they naturally wanted to get closer to him. Naturally, they took better care of Away than their own children. Every time they saw the look in those women's eyes when they saw Liao Qingyang, Away really wanted to roll her eyes. Fortunately, the name of the village chief was a woman and not a female. Otherwise, I might not have known how lively my family would be. Therefore, until Away can run around the courtyard with her short legs, those wives and aunts will be considered to have completed their merits and will no longer come. After Away became able to talk and run, Liao Qingyang once asked her to call him Master from now on. He turned around and left coldly, regardless of whether the young Away could understand. Away remembers that she was stunned for a long time, and then her hanging heart finally dropped. Now she is staying justifiably, and no longer has to worry about whether she will be abandoned by Liao Qingyang. Then there is his cheap senior brother, Xian. His name is Yan Xian. It seems that this senior brother is quite tough at such a young age. More than once, Away saw her being slapped by her master because she couldn't memorize books fluently. The slap was so real that even Away helped him because it hurt so much, but he pursed his lips and didn't scream, and endured it every time. However, Away didn't know who her master was because she saw that her senior brother had to read and practice calligraphy every day, pick up medicinal materials, memorize medical books, practice martial arts, and even play the flute. Away realized belatedly that her master was still a decathlete. You can teach anything. Thinking of this, Away was full of longing for the future. The British and American literature she had learned in her previous life was no longer useful here, and she didn't want to know anything in the future. So Away looked forward to growing up quickly and learning every trick from the Almighty Master. She was a good child who loved to learn. After being in this world for so long, Away still occasionally thinks of her grandfather. After all, her grandfather had been with her for more than 20 years in her previous life. But now she is gradually letting go of her grief. After all, her grandfather's death was due to illness, and her grandfather also hopes that she will live well, right? Since God gave her the opportunity to travel through time, although she still doesn't know what caused her to travel through time and who her true identity is, these are not important to her now. It's better to think about how to live a miserable life better. Yes, Master is a man who is proficient in medical skills. His obsession with studying medical skills is just like that of Grandpa Away. Naturally, he is very incompetent in making money to support his family. Senior brother, I am just a year-old child. What can I do? Away sighed inwardly. Although her eyes were still closed, her mind was running rapidly at the moment, sifting through all the plans to support the family. Selling something? So what should I sell? The master doesn't allow her to go out, so she has to investigate the market first, right? Suddenly, she felt something poking her in the face. Away suddenly opened her eyes and saw a year-old boy standing beside the bed, with a serious expression on his handsome face. Only a hint of cunning quickly slipped from his eyes, and Away realized that this cheap senior brother was poking him in the face and bullying her again. Away pouted, frowned, slapped away the finger that was about to poke her face again, and complained loudly. Senior brother is bullying. Yan Xian saw the little junior sister acting coquettishly and innocently and wanted him to poke her at her pink little face. Remembering the master's instructions, he immediately put his face on his face and said seriously, "Lazy girl, it's already midnight and I still can't get up. The master has ordered you to follow my senior brother and me to pick up medicine today." What? Picking medicine? Away's forehead was sweating. Master seems to be able to tell that she is different from ordinary people. Although he doesn't talk to her often, the content every time is not something that a 3 or 4-year-old child can fully understand. But the master had no intention of repeating it a second time and never asked her. Away vaguely felt that this master must have made a conclusion in his mind about her precocious wisdom. Away knew that no matter where she was, there would be monsters when things went wrong, so she didn't dare to tell her that she had traveled through time. She was very firm on this point. However, let a child under 4 years old pick up medicine? Master strictly adheres to the principle of starting from childhood. Yan Xian stood by the bed with his hands folded like an adult and looked at his little junior sister. Seeing that she was in a daze again, he suddenly felt that he had lost the dignity of being a senior brother. He stretched out his finger and poked her face and said seriously, "Lazy pig, why don't you get up quickly?" Away came back to her senses, said, "Oh," and quickly got up and washed up. To be honest, she didn't know much about what 3 or 4-year-old children knew, and she just tried her best not to be too obtrusive. However, during this period of time, her master and brother had never looked at her in surprise. After washing her face, Away saw her junior fellow apprentice scooping out the goat milk and a steamed bun that had been stewed in a small pot and placing them on the small square table in the main room. Come on, let's eat. Remember to wash the dishes. Come to the yard to find me when you're done eating. The little senior pinched Away's face, scooped up a book, and went to the yard. Away took a sip of the goat's milk. It had a strong odor and no good taste. But for the sake of her small body, Away tried her best to drink it all with the steamed bun. Regarding the goat milk, she mentioned it to her senior brother once. The original one was cow milk, but now the cows are very precious and they don't even let outsiders touch them. After much thinking, the young senior brother asked for some goat milk from the villagers. But it doesn't happen every day. Every 3 or 4 days, Away can drink it. She is already very satisfied with this. After eating and drinking, Away walked out of the house on her short legs and came to the yard. She saw her little senior brother sitting under a rose flower stand, reading in a trance. It's July now, and the pink rose is blooming just right. The whole courtyard is filled with a faint floral fragrance, and there are still a few petals swirling in the air. It's true. If you don't shake the fragrance, it will be chaotic, and if there is no wind, the flowers will fragrant by themselves. This kind of scenery contrasts with the boy under the flower stand, making his features look even more delicate. Away tilted her head, thinking that her little senior brother would be as long as possible in the future. She didn't realize that the bamboo fence outside the courtyard had been pushed open, and a man wearing a coarse cloth walked in. Although the man was dressed like a poor peasant, he was still tall, handsome, and had an indescribable magnanimity. He stared at Away's 2 braids, which were already messy, and looked at the back of her head with a deep gaze. He didn't know what he thought of, but he quietly watched the scene in front of him. It was Yan Xian who noticed it first. He looked at Away, who was in a daze, and shook his head helplessly. He immediately bowed his hands respectfully to the man and shouted, "Master." Only then did Away react, turned around and gave a crooked salute to Liao Qingyang and shouted sweetly, "Master." Liao Qingyang glanced at the 2 of them indifferently and said, in a classy way. There was no unnecessary expression on Jun's face, and he asked, "Xianer, how do you feel about the book I gave you yesterday?" With a small face, Yan Xian replied respectfully again, "My disciple is currently reading half of it. Any doubts?" My disciple saw that kasha is a medicine written in the book, but the symptoms corresponding to the kasha mentioned earlier and the kasha mentioned later are different. Why is this? Yan Xian came to learn about it. His little face was tense. You have little dabbling in medical skills, so it's not surprising that you don't know. The editor may have thought this issue was very simple, so he didn't explain it in detail. Liao Qingyang slowly said, "What you just mentioned are kasha kasha and kasha kasha. The former calms the liver and subdues yang, clears away heat and improves eyesight, while the latter clears the liver and benefits the kidneys, dispels wind, improves eyesight, moistens the intestines, and relieves constipation. There are fundamental differences in usage." Liao Qingyang glanced at Yan Xian and saw that his little face turned red, and then he said again, "Traditional Chinese medicine is profound and profound. Since you are willing to learn from me, you must pay attention. You are still young, but you can't slack off. You can find problems, which is good." Liao Qingyang's praise decisively boosted Yan Xian's motivation to learn. Away looked at it and thought that this master was extremely cool, so naturally she was eager to learn something. Naturally, her small movements could not escape Liao Qingyang's eyes. Liao Qingyang did look towards her, but when he met her eyes full of thoughts, he frowned. Away's heart skipped a beat. Master wouldn't like her, right? Chapter 4 is still called. Liao Qingyang didn't even look at Away, but walked straight towards the wicker chair under the rose stand and sat down. Yan Xian glanced at Away worriedly, and then secretly glanced at the master with an unkind expression. His bright black eyes turned several times, wondering what he was thinking. As for Away, she lowered her head and played with her fleshy little fingers, becoming more and more certain that this cheap master really didn't like her. "You, Liao Qingyang, who was sitting on the wicker